Good evening, dandies. Welcome to Undetermined, the podcast.
In the midnight hour, crimson flowers wilt and hang their heads.
Jiminy Christmas, guys. It's been how long?
A couple of years.
A minute? Yeah, it's been a while.
It's close to, over a year and a half, because it was like we got you in for like a Halloween episode.
Yeah, and it was a hot pandemic minute too, because it was right. I think we were in the middle of it.
Yeah, we were. This was
we
like
were in the
first.
Because I remember all of the projects that I was working on at the time, they were all basically responses to 2020.
Oh yeah, you started making masks.
Oh fuck, all of that. It was crazy. You know, the things we did, we did backflips. I mean, yeah, it's just really incredible. But you know what? The big takeaway when I look back on the whole experience in retrospect, was that me or you guys? I need to put on my, hold on. Let me do a do not disturb thing here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's critical. What we're going to do? Do not disturb. I freaking love, but they're imprecise, but you know, it helps me in situations like this. You know what? I'm going to do it from my phone. Everything talks to each other now. So I have to let me shameless. I don't ever really like to plug for Apple because, you know, they're like huge and
right.
Stupid to do that. But I have to say the new universal control feature is like the greatest thing on earth. I mean, in terms of my productivity and what I've been, because I mean, I'm running like 3 iPad Pros, but one I don't use in the middle of my normal everyday work, but 2 I do with my MacBook Pro, and with universal control, it's just seamlessly mouse and keyboard across all 3. And it's the greatest thing to happen since some of their accessibility features. I think it's just really great. All right.
Well, their shit always works. You know, that's the thing. It's compared to like, you know, PC or Android or anything else. It's just like the only problem I've ever had with Apple products is the fact that their shit becomes outdated at some point and you can't upgrade it anymore. But while it's like, you know, in the realm of accessibility, it works. It works every time.
It actually lasts long enough that it gets outdated, and that's
right. Mm-hmm.
That's a bonus.
There's also this incredibly fascinating marketing and sales aspect to it in terms of, you know, there has to be math and science behind, you know, this little team of people who determine exactly how long it's going to take for people to want a new upgrade or a new, want some kind of a change to their firmware. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's a science behind that. There has to be. And it's fascinating to me. You know, I think I first became fascinated with that when I almost took my iPhone. I think at the time it was the iPhone 5 or the iPhone 6 incarnation and threw it into the ocean.
And why?
Raised my fist to the heavens because I had installed the latest firmware update. This would have been in 2014 or something like that. I installed the latest firmware update and it virtually crippled my phone. And then I started reading reports from the New York Times where I wasn't the only one, right? That it crippled everybody. I mean, my phone was basically useless. I turned it off and put it in a closet, in a drawer, is what I did. And I, you know, used my iPad on Wi-Fi connections. It was stupid. And I was so incredibly angry about it. And I thought, you know, and then I started remembering all of the history that we have about product manufacturing, especially with technology, as it relates to functional obsolescence.
Yeah, built-in obsolescence. I mean? Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Right. Where it is strategized from the beginning how long things should last so that you can continue the marketing and sales initiative for any given iteration or version of a product.
Sure. And the firmware update is a perfect opportunity to cut that off.
Yeah. We see this in all products around, and mostly in America, because we're built on this kind of strategy when it comes to
consumerism,
marketing, product-based consumerism. And I think the classic textbook example of that is the Edison light bulb, the very first light bulb. I don't know if you know this story. So the very first light bulb that Edison invented and created, it's been going ever since he created it, and it's in the Smithsonian, and it's still going, right? The filaments are still, it's still lighting. It's like it never needed to be replaced. The technology, as it was invented to last forever, right?
Right.
But you can't sell forever. So that's where we started having functional obsolescence creep in. And why are we talking about this right now?
I don't know.
I don't know, but that happens.
It does.
It doesn't matter. I was starting to think about how I got my phone updated because, like, I'd kept my phone long enough that my carrier was like, we're going to all 5G and you're going to have to upgrade. So we're going to give you another phone. Because I was just like, nope, I'm good.
Yep.
With my iPhone, I don't know, 8 or 9 that I had.
Yeah. Yep.
I went from that to 13. So I clearly, right, it lasts.
Yeah. Well, I've held out on those iPhones. You know, I'm kind of a holdout until I have to upgrade. But in terms of my ability to use them in production, oh my God, the cameras just keep getting better and better.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, entire movies have been shot on those things.
I am able to take an entire production team. As a matter of fact, I do. And I have them use, my production team is right now, they're using Canon XF100s, professional grade cameras for live production shoots, for my video direction work for live production. And they're using those, but I'm also having them satellite iPhones. And iPhones, not just for video, but also for audio. Produces some of the best audio. I mean, well, you have to know how to hack the firmware to produce an uncompressed audio from the recording. I mean, a wave format, uncompressed. And you have to learn also how to bypass all of the internal compression and all of the bullshit that is built in by default. And, there is one app that I know of that I have my team use that allows you to do that, allows you to circumvent those built-in hardware compression default settings and everything else. And man, it's some of the best audio I've been able to capture. I mean, without a condenser mic, or something like that. And so I swear by it. I swear by the technology.
Oh, it's just getting better and better.
Right. It frustrates the fuck out of me too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a love-hate relationship. I guess that's what it is.
It is with all technology, I think. Yeah. Yep. So anyway.
Yeah, let's move on.
Let's move on.
Please,
9:12.
This is not making me comfortable. I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now.
Yes. Have a drink.
Oh, well, I'm on my second martini. So.
Okay. Well, let you know.
Oh, and I have to thank you guys for that. Because I've had a lot going on in my life. I had a major move across country. I've had, I've taken on, as of a few weeks ago, an 8th job. I yeah, just shoot me. But I'm very fortunate to be able to be working in all of the areas that I am passionate about.
You got married, didn't you?
I am engaged. The marriage.
Oh, okay. I'm engaged. That's right.
Yeah, it's interesting because my fiance is Brazilian, and so the entire family on that side is in Brazil. It's a little tough and it's a much bigger family than mine, right? You can count my family on one hand,
right?
And with Iran, there is their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, their mothers, their sisters. It's a bigger deal. And the more I started realizing culturally, I was thinking, we'll just get married on the freaking beach, where we train for foot volley and, and our backyard here in beautiful Deerfield Beach. Oh my God, it's like paradise. I've been here for a little over a year and a half. And it's just, I'm in the water every morning. I'm in the ocean every single morning. And
wow, God, that sounds so great.
The past couple of mornings, it's been incredible. The ocean, for the past 2 days, what I love about it is its diversity. It can change, right, on a dime. Yeah. And I go to the same place every morning, but it's a different vibe, a different environment because of the weather. The tides are higher, the waves are bigger, or they're not. The past few days, it's been like a lake. Not one, and this is the Atlantic. This is the hardcore Atlantic. Not one ripple, and crystal clear as far as you can go, as deep as you can go. And I can see the color of all of the tropical fish that swim around my legs. It's just paradise, man. And my happy hour joint is here. And it's because it's a destination spot. All of my friends end up coming to visit me now. I hope I count you two among them. If you want to get away, because it is, it's pretty sweet. The cost of living is half of what it was in Southern California.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were just, I guess I probably shouldn't advertise this too much because, we kind of want to keep it the best kept secret, but I think the Washington Post just rated where I live in Deerfield Beach as being the least expensive average housing market for a beach city, for beach housing in the country. And it just happens to be one of the country's most pristine and beautiful and desirable beach cities to live in.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So I've got some friends who are actually looking at moving across country and buying here now and making that kind of same crazy change. I mean, it was a leap of faith. I moved here for love. And it was a crazy move because I had no job guarantees other than the company I had just started and my clients that were on the West Coast and my performance opportunities, which were all mostly on the West Coast. And, I did not, there was no guarantee that I was going to have that here. And, it ended up being, in retrospect, a foolish fear and a needless fear. And simply because not only have I retained all of my professional network on the West Coast, but I'm still actively working projects with them. The only difference is I don't have to drive in freaking LA traffic to get to all of my venues or all of my clients. They're just flying me out now, and it's a 5-hour flight. So it was a great change for me. In many ways. So
I'm glad.
Yeah, well, congratulations for sure on all of that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And what prompted us getting back together too was your, well, I don't know if it's your latest project. How can you even say that when you've got so many going on?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, 14 minutes in, we're talking to
our friend Aaron
Ball.
Howdy.
You're welcome. And of course, we talked about this last time you were on, that your first performance on screen, on the silver screen, was as a toddler playing Baby Ford in The Legend of Boggy Creek, one of my favorite cult films of all time.
Yeah.
So happy to hear that.
Yeah, and it was amazing when Matt told me, hey, I know a guy who was like a family, who was all involved in that, and he was in that movie, and it was like, no fucking way. And I was like, well, we need to get him on.
Yeah.
But most recently, a new book has come out talking about the FOUKE Monster, FOUKE, Arkansas.
Well, yes. So actually, this is The Beast of Boggy Creek. So it's actually written by Lyle Blackburn.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of my blood brothers.
The
first time we met each other was for the re-premiere of the restored version of the film, which was in 2019, June of 2019.
Yeah.
At the Perot Theater. The same theater used to be an old Paramount theater in the silent film days. One of those gigantic movie palaces that is, gives you chills every time you walk in it because it's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
So the first time I had stepped foot in that theater in 45 years, right? So we had the re-premiere there, met Lyle, because Lyle, he is the go-to, the one person in all of the world who is the cataloger and the record keeper for all of the sightings of not only this particular creature, and it's not just a creature, right? I mean, it's creatures.
Right.
Obviously, you can't expect longevity over 100 years for pretty much anything that is a mammal.
Right. Procreation, which requires at least 2.
Exactly.
Right.
And consequently, the reports corroborate that. There are varying sizes. So anyway, he's the go-to for he has the principal database that is the official database for all of these sightings and most other cryptids.
Yes.
What's interesting about this idea of cryptid, a cryptid is kind of it's a pseudoscientific designation, if you will, for any unconfirmed documented species. Now, what's really interesting about it is there have been cryptids, and cryptozoology has actually been a studied science for a long time.
Oh, yes.
In this country, and there have been creatures based on the hard work and research of these cryptozoologists that have eventually become known and confirmed by actual science.
Yeah.
So, for example, the Black Panther we now know is something that's
a real thing.
The giant land tortoise used to be a cryptid, but now we know that it's a real creature.
Right. The lowland gorilla.
Eventually, the evidence has come. Exactly, the lowland gorilla. So it's really cool work that they do, but it's also, you have to, in talking with my brother Lyle, I say my brother, he's my, he's not my real brother, he's my blood brother, but in talking with him, just getting to know him personally, I totally understand it's crazy because he gets lumped in with all of the crazies.
Yeah.
People who want to invent stories for their sensationalist value.
Right.
Or because they want to make some money.
If I could interject real quick, a lot of people may think that they don't know who Lyle Blackburn is. Lyle's done a bunch of television. If you're interested in like a cryptid, shows or anything like that. Leather cowboy hat guy with the beard.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the first time we met, I had a straw cowboy hat. First time we met, we have identical skull rings.
Oh, right on.
That we wear every day. I mean, yeah, we're. I mean, when I say we're brothers, I mean if anybody were to play me in a movie, I would want that to be Lyle. And Lyle's like, if anybody's going to play me in a movie, it needs to be you. So yeah, it's kind of like that. But he's, Animal Planet, Discovery Channel.
Discovery, all over the place. Yeah.
Finding Bigfoot was a big show. Monster Quest was a big show.
Yep.
That was, if you Google Monster Hunter in North America, you're probably going to find Lyle Blackburn.
You're going to see Lyle. He's going to be in the top results. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should invite him on too.
Absolutely.
Oh, I hope you do. You should. He's got a new book that's coming out. I don't know if I can talk about it. I probably can't and shouldn't, but it's right up your alley in terms of the things we've been talking about, and it has to do with Texarkana and the 1940s. So you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. But you need to reach out to Lyle. I'll hook you up.
Cool. Yeah,
that'll be fun.
So the book actually, The Beast of Boggy Creek, was actually a print released by Anomalist Publishing, their publishing company out of Austin, Texas, I believe. And they published, I think that book was distributed and released in 2012. Might have been 2012. So the book's been out for a while.
Okay.
But this is the first audiobook version of his book.
And we know who did the audio.
Yeah, the narrator for it.
Well, and it was kind of a kismet situation. I had and I think the last time all of us talked, a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, I had mentioned that I had just built my recording studio, and I had just, I was wanting to move into audiobook production and narration.
That's right.
I spent about a year learning the tools of the trade, learning the industry, learning who the people were, et cetera, the publishers, and how to get on, the Amazon system and all of that. And went to visit. Well, it was actually, I went to Dallas. This would have been in, maybe 20, I can't even remember it all, pandemic, screw you. So it was around, it was after the premiere in 2019. So it had to have been in 2020. It had to have been before. Oh, it would have been right before the pandemic. So it would have been before March of 2020, like probably January, February. And I went to Dallas for a screening at the Texas Theater of the Legend of the restored version.
Restored.
The 4K version of the Legend of Boggy Creek, to sit on a Q&A panel and to also just represent.
Right.
And for the listeners out there who aren't familiar with the Texas Theater, it's in a district of Dallas called the Cliff Oaks District. And it's the theater where John Wilkes Booth was arrested.
Oh. Huh. Interesting.
No, shot Kennedy. Who shot Kennedy?
Lee Harvey.
You're talking about Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald. Sorry, I'm going back to fucking Abraham Lincoln.
I was like, wow, really? He got that far?
Hey, I'm on my second martini, guys.
Okay.
But Oswald was arrested in that theater because basically how that happened, he was pursued and he hid out in the theater. I don't remember the movie that was playing. It was in the middle of a movie. And he sat down in a seat to try and evade the search.
Yeah. Blend in.
And then they came in and they apprehended him in that theater, in the Texas Theater. So there's actually a brass plate on the seat.
Oh, wow.
In that theater when he was arrested, which is crazy. So there's a little bit of history there, but I went there, and in Dallas, it was a really good opportunity to talk with Lyle about wow, I'm getting into this audiobook thing. I don't, and you've actually published a couple of books by now. And he was like, oh, wow. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I had not put that together.
Yeah.
And my publisher, as a matter of fact, this is Lyle talking, has been getting on to me for trying to find a narrator to do an audiobook version.
Oh, really?
And so, it wasn't up to Lyle. It's actually up to his publishers. So I had to submit an audition and a sample of, from the book, because, Lyle as the author, of course, he has some weight and clout, but really the publishers they're the decision makers.
Right.
And so it really was boiled down to having publishers that believed in me, having one of my very, very best friends, Lyle Blackburn, believe in me, having his publishers believe in me. And then there was a third round of having to court the audiobook publisher, Beacon Audiobooks. They are the world's, I know it, I think they are the world's largest publisher of audiobooks.
Wow.
Yeah, they have 600 narrator producers at any given time producing and narrating in all of the world's languages. Mm-hmm. They're out of New York. So then it became this, how do I get in the door with Beacon?
Yeah.
And Lyle really helped usher me in with Beacon to get this project done. And, I think at the end of the day, I'm good at what I do. I know that. And I wouldn't be pursuing this as a freelance career path if I didn't have a passion for it. Right.
Right.
And if I didn't want to continue to improve and learn and grow and, I'm putting in a lot of effort to do it. That said, it's wonderful to know that Lyle had my back. He goes up to Beacon and Beacon doesn't really accept any untried, unpublished, it's
right.
We're all SAG-AFTRA union work, even though that's weird, right? It's right. SAG-AFTRA, you think it's screen television, but that is the union that covers audiobook narrators. And so it's all of those hurdles, and Lyle really pushed for me. And, at the end of the day, it was also about marketing.
Yeah.
How cool and how much better is it to be able to market your book when it's narrated by one of the dudes who lived your book?
Right.
Right. Well, and I was going to ask you about that too. It's like, okay, so your father produces the film.
No, my father was the production designer and art director for the film.
It was his boss.
Right. He worked with Charlie. They were the two guys who basically brought the film into life.
Right. Right.
Who conceived it and made it happen.
So this is an integral part of your life. This is something, since you're a toddler, it's something, probably know the story inside now, but as you're, recording the audiobook, as you're going through this and reading the book prior and everything, was there anything like, holy shit, I didn't know that, or anything that really stood out to you?
I'd forgotten all about that.
Right. Or I'd forgotten all about that. Or
both, every other page, things I didn't know. And things I had forgotten, but on both sides of the coin, for sure. Mm-hmm. I did not know, for example, that there are actual skeletal remains and of what, by all accounts, matches exactly what people have been reporting since well, actually, you can go even back further. The reports go back, I think, in Lyle's database through published articles in local newspapers in the region to the 1850s.
Wow.
That's what makes this so compelling, is that these reports are what Lyle looks for, and Lyle could tell you better than I can. I can't speak for Lyle and his expertise. He's an expert in what he does.
Yes.
And I'm just on the sidelines. But the things I did not know were that these sightings have been going back to the mid 19th century in North America, that they're all corroborated. They're all common denominators, that they all follow the same geographic patterns in terms of where the sightings are, that the sightings are all reported by a wide diversity of people who have no idea that this is even a thing, and they just happen upon it, and they're freaked out by it, or they are people who do know it's a thing, can identify with it, and go, holy crap, who do I turn to now? Because I don't want to talk to anybody. They're going to think I'm nuts.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that happens a lot. I mean, as we said before, we've had Tom Whitmore from MUFON on a few times.
Yeah.
And, I'm surprised at how many people I find have like a UAP or a UFO story.
Yeah. Yep.
And kind of have the same sort of feeling that I did when I've had a couple of experiences. And I talked to him about it on the podcast, but it's like, I've never really talked to anybody before of any authority about this.
Right.
Because of that very fact, of the fact that I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know who was going to turn the story into what.
Yep.
I didn't know who could find it useful. And it's just that. It's just that, I'm afraid I was going to be judged by everybody that I ever exposed it
That's
to.
absolutely right. And one of the things, so to go back to your question, John, about what are the things that I learned about the revisiting all of this, is that these communities, these very small town, population 400, 500, tiny little communities in southwestern Arkansas,
right?
Northeastern Texas, northwestern Louisiana, these very tiny little pocket communities of people, they don't really want exposure.
Right.
These are people who really don't, they really don't want the limelight.
They're there because they don't want you paying attention to them.
They do not want you paying attention to them in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So what I learned that's most fascinating, I think, about the whole experience of this book and reading this book are all of the coming out, if you will, experiences of some of these most of them hunters.
Right.
Because if you think about it, the people who are going to see this creature are going to be in the woods.
People that are out in nature.
Yeah.
They're out in nature, and most of them are hunters. So one of the things I love about these stories and about this book is, oh man, if you are a hunter anywhere in North America, I'm not a hunter. I hunted when I was a kid with my grandfather.
Same.
I did a little bit of that, and it's just not something I gravitated to.
Right.
But holy cow, can I identify with it? And if you're a hunter and you're out there in the woods, read this book or listen to it, because the accounts they're going to hit home.
Yeah.
Everything from being in a deer stand and 6 feet up and not really expecting what you see. The hunters that have reported this, and they're coming mostly from hunters. They're also coming from local residents who have these very rural areas that are adjacent to tree-lined areas and forests, and or who have livestock, hogs or cattle, or if they have easily accessible food. Come on, most animals are going to gravitate toward that, right?
Yep.
They're going to come out of the woods and they're going to get easily accessible food if they can.
A food or a water source. Yep.
Or a water source, which of course, one of the old adages is they always follow the creeks. And they do. If you look at the major waterway, that's another thing I learned. If you look at the major waterways throughout all of the American South, the tributaries, the waterways, how they intersect, everywhere you find those waterways through heavily forested areas, you're going to find sightings and you're going to find reports. And they're multiple reports. It's in some of the most compelling reports in this book are when there are 3 or 4 or 5 people that see the whole thing at the same time.
Yeah.
And it can't be explained any other way.
Right.
Those are some of the other things Lyle looks at. He looks at, okay, how credible is this?
Right.
Is this just somebody wanting attention, or is this a really credible report based on prior reports, based on the database that he's built? So he's really, I love what he's done. I love that he has taken this legend that is part of my legacy that I have since I was a toddler, since I grew up. this has been a part of my life.
Right.
And he's actually done something with it to bring it into, bring it from a speculative science into something that could actually become one day maybe not in my lifetime, but in somebody's lifetime, a real science.
Yeah.
And we will know that this has existed. I mean, for God's sake, I just read in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, there's support now. They found the bones that support the legendary sightings of the Loch Ness Monster. You know, the paleontologists have actually unearthed something that's like, oh, wow, we did not know this existed before. Huh. And we didn't think it was possible, but now we're starting to look at all the reports at Loch Ness.
That's interesting.
In Scotland, and we're like going, whoa, this may actually be a thing.
Right.
Yeah, I like that stuff, and I think it's kind of, I appreciate it when it's well, like, documented and researched. Right. Yeah. I hate just like the bullshit, well, I saw this. No, man.
Yeah.
You know, show me something. Tell me something. I whether you're right or wrong, I don't honestly care that much. I just think it's really interesting hearing some of these really good stories.
That's what's great about Lyle's work, is that he doesn't make a case either way. Mm-hmm. He doesn't. I mean, actually, you can read all of his work and you're like, where does he stand on? Does he believe the thing exists? You're not gonna get an answer from him on that.
Right.
What you are gonna get is just well documented accounts.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to form your own opinion. And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, this is that's you can't even push that into the realm of coincidence, right?
Right. Yeah.
You should go back and check out, seriously, our buddy Tom Whitmore from MUFON. He is that kind of guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. He really is. And man, when he starts telling you just some of the theories for things out there, it is just like, holy fuck.
Yeah, I've never looked at it from that angle. Yeah.
That is fascinating. I don't know if this shit's real or not, but wow, what a take.
Well, that's just the thing. I think a lot of people who research things like this are just automatically, I mean, just like Aaron said, they're kind of lumped into this category of being kooks because they're even researching it in the first place. But it's like, when you look at the fact that they're researching it as a phenomenon,
yeah,
and they're saying, okay, well, you know, what is the paradigm of this phenomenon? What makes it something that is of interest to anyone? And they start to, because so many people disregard those stories, so many people disregard those comments and sightings and people's, you know, because they just think that, well, it's just automatically gets lumped in this category. And they don't take them seriously. I mean, and as you say about hunters, that's one thing that, you know, I grew up hunting, and I know that, God, you got to take those people seriously. I mean, I've seen some strange shit in the woods, but I could always explain it.
Yeah, that's right. That's what's compelling about all of these hunter stories, is that they are experienced hunters. They've seen pretty much everything they're gonna see in their lifetime,
right?
When they're out there, and they know that, and we get the whole range of hunters, right? The kids who learned it from their fathers, the kids that are out there with their fathers, the fathers who learned it from their fathers. Mm-hmm. You know, when you start seeing and cataloging reports from experienced legacy hunters,
right,
in these particular areas.
Yeah.
And there's some chilling accounts, dudes, in this book.
Yeah.
I mean, the FOUKE Monster, I think probably the FOUKE Monster being unique, of course, to that particular area of Arkansas, which is what this initial book, The Beast of Boggy Creek, is about. It's about the FOUKE Monster. It's about the reports that have been generated around this one geographic region, around the Sulphur River bottoms in Arkansas. And some of Lyle's geographic writing is beautiful. It just really transports you to these specific geographic locations. And that's another thing I love about it. His writing is just damn good.
Yeah.
So guys, I have a little excerpt. If I could read you a little excerpt from the book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think it's one of the highlights for me. There are many, but this is one of the highlights for me because it's a first-hand account from Lyle. Mm-hmm. And it's one of his, you know, he's never seen the creature himself.
Right.
You know, he's always wanted, you know, he's interviewed so many people, for God's sake.
Right.
That would be great for him. I mean, what a treat. But this is as close as I think Lyle got to seeing evidentiary proof of something. Mm-hmm. And it's a really cool. So just to give you some background of where this picks up, Lyle and his wife, they were at a Bigfoot conference. They have these, there's the Bigfoot Research Conservancy. There are all of these different organizations that have been built up around this whole phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And he and his wife were traveling to one of them, and it was really on the outskirts of FOUKE, where the FOUKE Monster hails from. Mm-hmm. And the only reason why they were going was because they wanted to hear a particular speaker at this conference, Smoky Crabtree. Hmm. And if you're familiar with the legend of Boggy Creek, you'll remember that name, at least. Smoky Crabtree he's an interesting character. He was half showman, mm-hmm. so you never knew what he was doing, if it was real or not, right. If he was the man behind the curtain. Mm-hmm. But the reason why he turned showman was because he had some very real experiences, and he found ways to capitalize on those experiences. His experiences, nonetheless, were fascinating. And so Lyle wanted to check it out, right? Mm-hmm. And so he goes to hear him speak with his wife, and Smokey invites he and his wife and about, I think, 3 or 4 other people to a warehouse where he has collected what he feels might be the remains of such a creature. Mm. As the FOUKE Monster. Hmm. So Lyle's going, yeah, okay, right. Let's go for the ride. Let's bring it on. Bring it on. Let's see what's going on. Hmm. So he takes them to this warehouse. They there's a padlock and everything. He does the padlock, and then there are all these freaking things in the warehouse, and that's kind of where the excerpt that I'm going to start reading begins.
Sure.
Okay.
Smokey slid the wooden panel out of the way, revealing a large display case behind it. The case appeared to be roughly 8 feet by 4 feet deep and 2 feet high. It was made of clear acrylic glass resting on top of a wooden support structure, which was like a table on wheels. Smokey undid the front latch and propped open the glass lid so we could all get a better look inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell. The stench of organic decay made worse by the closed confines of the acrylic glass case and dead air of the musty building. When the lid was raised, all the pent-up odor crawled out and hung like an invisible fog in the immediate area. It was pretty much the worst thing I have ever smelled. But as I gazed into the case, I quickly forgot about the horrible smell. Inside lay the skeletal remains of something that had once been a very large animal of some type. It was devoid of skin, but covered with a layer of dried sinew, tendons, and muscle, which still clung to the bones. It was something between a skinless corpse and a skeleton, mostly brown and yellow in color, and completely intact except for the skull. Everyone in the group stood somewhat aghast, adjusting to the foul odor, and tried to figure out what kind of skeleton it was that lay before us. I ran through a quick list in my mind. Human? No. Dog? No. Deer? No. Horse? No. Bear? I don't think so. Ape? Maybe. Smokey explained that it had been found just south of the Arkansas border in Texas. I amended my list of possibilities to include more of the indigenous wildlife, such as armadillo, beaver, and coyote, but the skeleton was far too large to be any of those. Cougar, perhaps? Yeah, cougars have been known to inhabit the area, but still it looked too massive even for the largest variety of southern mountain lion. I was at a loss for a reasonable explanation. All that was left at the moment was to consider the possibility that it had belonged to something more unique, something as yet unexplained. Was I looking at the skeletal remains of a FOUKE monster? My nerves tingled at the thought.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's just freaking good writing, and it's also good first-person account.
Yeah, it definitely takes you there. You know?
Yeah.
You feel like you're in the room.
And that's exactly what I would do in that moment. I would just, in my head, I'd be trying to disprove it. That's
right. Yep.
Where's this guy trying to fuck with me?
Right.
Yep.
Pull one over.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. Because, I think he was also Smokey Crabtree, the plaster cast that you see in the movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek, that came from, I think, his bean field. It's questionable as to whether or not he created that,
Right.
And then he tried to sell tickets he was just a showman, So there was kind of like, whoa, that's crazy. And so what's really great about this story, though, is Lyle also delves into the backstory. Okay, he is able to trace where that thing came from in terms of where it was found. It's probably more than likely that skeleton was actually dumped by a taxidermist who was working on, is what Lyle comes to. Mm-hmm. It's not probably a FOUKE monster or a Bigfoot of some kind. And I think we kind of get the impression that it's really definitely not. But the journey Lyle takes us on to get us there is freaking fascinating.
Right.
Because it opens up the door of possibility, right? So we all of a sudden start thinking, okay, wow, there is an opening. But we have to be very clear about those openings.
Yes.
In terms of what is factually based, what is evidential, what has been researched well enough to throw it into the realm of science and not the realm of speculative fiction.
Right, but it at least gives you a window into that there's a sociological kind of cadre of people like this.
Oh yeah,
and that there's experiences like this that are going on that are outside of the realm of maybe deep scientific research, but there's still this culture or subculture,
right,
of people. It's an interesting slice of Americana too.
It's super interesting, especially in this particular region of the South, where there is still a proclivity for people to, it's not Bader-Meinhof complex. It's this idea of, I don't know, I'm sure there's a psychological term for it, but we see it a lot playing out in our current demographics that coalesce around particular political persuasive argument that could absolutely have no basis in fact whatsoever.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. And people tend to coalesce around that. Well, conspiracy theories, for example.
Right. Schadenfreude.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a proclivity for certain people to, especially if their neighbors buy into something because they heard it from a trusted source,
right.
A friend or a neighbor or a pastor or someone they believe in.
Right.
And that then gets propelled and moved forward to the point to where it becomes almost reality.
Right.
Even though it's founded on fiction.
Right.
And Lyle does a great job of dissecting and identifying, okay, that's probably where this came from in this particular sense. So let's not count that or include that in our discussion.
It speaks to the people that have bullshit radar.
Right.
Yeah. I want to hear more from you about that, Matt.
Well, I really do think, like, I was just kind of thinking in my head, a lot of these people that we are talking about politically, they will just eat up any bullshit that's thrown at them as long as it's by the right person.
Right.
Right. Me, on the other hand, and that's why I'm so fucking horrified, because I have some pretty decent bullshit radar. And oh my God, does that guy set off the sirens?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. And I'm just like, holy fuck, my bullshit radar is like going insane. How are you people not seeing this shit?
Right.
Oh, and it scares the fuck out. That's what scares me.
Yeah.
But, also, I think, I don't know if it's more anxiety producing or less anxiety producing for me to know that this shit has been going on since there have been human beings on the planet.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's not anything new. I mean, I'm working right now. I mean, one of my many projects is I'm production designer for Mission Opera's have two main stage productions. They're in Santa Clarita, a small regional opera company in Santa Clarita. I've been doing their production design, meaning I'm designing conceptually their opera productions for a few seasons now. And I'm very grateful to be able to have, this is where the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. My father, his work in The Legend of Boggy Creek, for example, was, recreating all of this atmosphere, the gels, the color. And if you see the restored film, I mean, my God, the colors are just spectacular.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, it's just a beautiful film to watch. But also, like the glass tree was something he put a lot of work into, where he put all of the, recreating all of the jars on the tree limbs and all of these wonderful things. Well, that's what I'm doing now, but I'm doing it for live theater. And, the point that I'm trying to make there is that in designing a show, I'm having to really think through these elements of what's going to appeal to an audience in an authentic way.
Yeah.
Without looking like I'm trying to manipulate them.
Or that it's contrived,
Right. That's a hard balance to strike.
Yeah,
it's hard to strike, but when I think about the current political situation, I think about Shakespeare's Julius Caesar.
Yeah, I was going to mention Caesar earlier.
The first main stage production I'm designing for Mission Opera is Romeo and Juliet, the Gounod opera from 1867. So it's very solidly mid 19th century opera, and it is very much in a 19th. I mean, there's nothing 16th century about it. I mean, other than its source material. It is new music. It's contemporary. It's like most productions actually set it in a 19th century, mid 19th century.
Kind of the Baz Luhrmann version of
Right.
Well, that's exactly what it was, right? At the time, that's what Gounod was doing. He was like updating Romeo and Juliet, like Bernstein did with West Side Story. It's not any different, really. But the production that I'm designing, I'm working very closely with the stage director, and we wanted to bring aspects of the globe, the Shakespeare globe, into it, and make it more meta, so that it almost becomes a theater within a theater piece. Without getting into the details of that, what we're talking about reminds me that this phenomenon of people coalescing around a fiction is nothing new. It's not unprecedented.
Sure.
And in fact, great works of art have been built up around this very subject.
Absolutely.
To teach us, I think, about the dangers inherent in it.
Sure.
And so I'm very fortunate to be working in an artistic capacity that allows me to explore these kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's also very apparent in some of these, in Lyle's work and some of the work of the, you could even say, you mentioned, John, I think you mentioned the UFO phenomenon and UFO sightings and all of that sort of thing earlier. I'm sure that there are studies on that end as well. All unexplained phenomena can be, I think it's a worthy discussion to have. What I don't like, for example, let me tell you. So the genre of writing that Lyle does. So the audiobook that I just done of The Beast of Boggy Creek. The genre, you're going to see it mixed, but the primary genre you're going to see it in is speculative nonfiction. Think about that.
So I'm going to bring Shakespeare back into it and point out that Shakespeare, most of his plays weren't his stories originally. Of course. Right? He went out and he found these old stories, and what he did was he figured out how to tell the story better.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's kind of what you're trying to do and what Lyle's trying to do.
actually, yeah, Romeo and Juliet comes from, there are centuries before Shakespeare's play.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and actually there's a great body of research from Shakespeare scholars that will tell you exactly where he got his ideas and his actual source material from.
Mhm.
I mean, to the point to where Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet could be considered an adaptation.
Yeah.
Right. It's fanfic.
Yeah, essentially. And I mean, that's what I was going to say about Caesar
Mhm.
and Julius Caesar. It's like there's so many people who look to Shakespeare's work and are sympathetico to everything that Caesar went through in the Ides of March and, to Brute. And, they think about the assassination. And that's kind of the view that Shakespeare took, was like, this poor man was murdered. It's like, there's a reason why all those people murdered that son of a bitch.
That's true.
And they weren't just bad guys. But I mean, we look at Brutus still this day, and brutality and the source of those things as being, it's like, but he might have had a good motive.
But I also think when I think of that play,
Mhm.
I think what stands out to me most is the idea of mob mentality.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's Shakespeare's interpretation.
And what we've seen in our own government very recently.
Fuck, that's good. Yeah, you're creeping me out again. There we go.
Mhm.
Jesus.
So again, what we're going through is not unprecedented, but
Right.
I challenge everyone I meet to look at what we're going through many different lenses. An historical lens is super important.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sake, if we don't know our history, we're doomed, right?
Right. And that's why I'm scared, is because I do know history, and we're getting pretty close to the doomed part.
Oh God. Yeah. Especially with what's going on in Texas and, book bannings.
Well, hey, I'm in Florida, guys.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And we're still in Missouri.
Yeah, and you're still in Missouri.
I'll see your
Florida.
DeSantis and Rachel Hall.
Oh shit! Okay, well, if we're playing that game, yeah. I'm about ready to piss. Can we? I bet I can piss farther than you. Anyway. Well, what do you have? What do you have, guys? I mean, what's going on in the world?
Oh, the world. Isn't that a subjective thing?
Yeah.
My world's very local lately. I'm going back to work, going back to school, teaching, trying to get excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Much better than the pandemic version, what teaching was. But of course, we're kind of ignoring, or placating the idea that it doesn't exist anymore. Of course, it's still going on.
Right.
So, in teaching in what capacity, John?
Well, I work in special education.
Okay.
Primarily working with kids with autism.
Spectacular.
Is where I work. Basic, repetitive learning, discrete trial, things like that. So my world, as it's put, is very limited to that. Not a lot of abstract work in what I do. Very remediated, but important, in integrating people with disabilities into the modern world and into the functioning world.
That's such important work. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I too am starting my 8th job is actually, I was just accepted to voice faculty at I guess I should say it. It's part of my job now. I should help promote my university, Nova Southeastern University. It's a beautiful, well-funded research university in Florida, Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
It's an interesting university. I'm on voice faculty, so I'm teaching applied voice and then undergraduate coursework. I just got this is my first academic job. And I had to set my schedule. We start on Monday, and I just set my schedule with my students. And I got that first email addressing me as Professor Ball. It was like, oh, I wanted to frame it. It was like the
Right.
moment. I just wanted to frame the moment. It was so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. So that, I've got a lot of work to do there. It's an interesting, it's a great crossroads for me.
Uh-huh.
They're hiring me, of course, on faculty to bring in great part what I've been doing professionally to their students, to help them do basically what I do, which is horrifying on one end of the spectrum. But it's also very affirming, life affirming, and career affirming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've always resented that terminology that, those who can't teach. And it's like, no. There's many things that I can do that I could not teach you how to do. It's a different skill. It's a different skill entirely. And especially my first certification, I got a certification in teaching history. I have my undergrad in a history degree, and it's like, oh, I can do this. I know so much history, I can do this. But teaching it to others and having them absorb it, having them express it, having them relate to it, it's a struggle. It can be, especially when you look at the diversity of people and how they learn.
So is it the diversity? I was going to ask, what is making it a struggle for you specifically? I mean, is it the student demographic and
It is.
The current times? I can imagine our current cultural and political climate.
I mean, as far as like special education is concerned, it's been easier in some capacity because a lot of children with autism, they are just the same as they are different. In a lot of ways, there's certain avenues of teaching, certain strategies that you use that work kind of universally. But then there's others that don't because of splinter skills and their ability to do things in different areas. But history, as far as for typically developing students is concerned, I mean, the places where kids come from, where they have their biases from their family, where they have so many different ways of learning things, and myths you have to bust. The idea of bottoms up versus top down history is very hard for kids, in high school,
and just the general apathy of high schoolers too. Half the time,
you're competing with all of that. You're competing with trouble with girlfriends and boyfriends, and
normal. We would expect that, but then you've got their background, and I'm sure a lot of that just comes from their parents, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. Their family dynamic and keeping it interesting, keeping them engaged is, very difficult in teaching history. Primarily when I got my undergrad, it was just because, I said I'd rather write a 30-page paper than do 10 math problems.
Right.
Any day of the week. I can bullshit my way through a 30-page paper.
That's really interesting because, it's so that brings up a really interesting subject. I mean, philosophically, it's like, is there a point at which history becomes abstract?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's totally subjective. History for a dock worker in Boston, when the atomic bomb dropped in Japan, or the bombs per se, is totally different than a dock worker in Tokyo.
Yeah, of course.
And I mean, those perspectives, history is all about perspective and what it means to you. And those things are all subjective. The times of looking at dates and events and things like that are important. But what makes those things important is how it relates to people. It's the human issue.
So what's fascinating to me is we're seeing, especially here in Florida, my state's legislation and their legislative initiatives, an attempt to control the narrative of history.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that there is a singular perspective. And it's stunning to me that that's happening, because that's been happening. That I would expect that to happen like centuries earlier. I thought we'd kind of advanced beyond that.
Sure.
No.
But
we're going backwards.
We haven't. And I'm kind of like, oh wow, really? That surprising to me. I guess I haven't been paying attention.
Right.
I should have voted in the fucking primary.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have been getting that wake up call with like the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Choice is a good way to put it.
Supreme Choice, yeah.
Oh, that was a spectacular, what did we say, conflation?
Right. The Supreme Choice.
Love it. Oh my God.
It works.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
Or it doesn't.
Well, it's true. It is an interesting time, and I will say in the last few weeks I've felt a lot more encouraged than I have in a long time.
Yeah. We're getting a little boost.
All right, that there's been a shot in the arm.
Yeah.
Matt, what's going on? What's going on with you, my brother?
What's going on with me? Still working at home, talking to sad people a lot of the time.
But making a difference, though, my friend, making a difference, right?
I try to.
Yeah, we're both trying.
I mean, you are. I mean, you have to believe that, because otherwise we're all doomed.
No shit, and I better be, because I could be making a fuck ton more doing something else.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But less stress and yeah.
That maybe that's a bad way to put it. Maybe that's the honest way to put it, though.
Yeah.
Too, if it didn't mean something to me, I guarantee you, I would find another line of work.
Oh, sure.
Well,
Yeah.
bravo. As we say in opera, because my friend, that's I was talking to another friend of mine who was struggling with some personal issues and work issues and professional issues. And, it's, on the one hand, it's easy for me to say this because I'm in a really good place in my life, work and professionally, and I'm doing the things that are a part of my vocation. And I'm very blessed and very thankful and grateful for that. What I tend to forget is all of the hard, freaking ball-busting work I've done to get myself there. Yeah, I tend to be the kind of person to go, oh my God, that's like beautiful. It's like a miracle. I can't believe this is happening to me. I won that award. Oh, that's fabulous. Oh, that's great. And I'm like, wait, I have to back up and go, I starved myself to death. I had no sleep for 6 months. I worked my fingers to the fucking bone for 2 years. I put myself through hell for 6. I mean, I tend to conveniently forget about all of that, and everything seems like a great miracle and a great blessing.
Right. Yeah.
So it's easy for me to tell someone else, or to say to someone else, or to coach someone else, to think more simplistically.
Yeah.
My go-to question is one that was asked of me by my mother, my beautiful, beautiful mother, when I was coming out of some horrible medical issues, hospitalization for almost half a year, a stroke, debilitating. None of the doctors would ever have expected me to be a contributing member of society today. And one question, and the only question that my mother asked me was, what makes you happy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just what makes you happy? What is the thing that brings you joy?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'd never been asked that before. I'd never been confronted with that before. I had always been, I had all of these things that I did, and I just did them, but I never concentrated them into the one simplified point, the singularity. And the singularity was, what is the one thing that brings me maximum joy? And that one thing was music. And that's why I set off on my path to do that. But it's we don't, Matt, you have to know that you are making a tremendous difference in so many people's lives by now.
I hope so. And it's a weird thing because, like, I want that. At the same time, I can't think that way either. I think if I keep thinking that way, it'll kind of make me not good.
Complacent. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it absolutely does. Keep you on your toes, my brother.
It's, and I have to be on my toes. And that doesn't mean I don't have off nights.
Right.
That doesn't mean that there aren't times when I get a call from somebody and I'm like, what the fuck is your deal?
Or you're dialing it in,
right?
Yeah.
Or just, it can be all, because there are some really fucked up things that people will call me with, and I probably shouldn't go into any detail on that.
Yeah.
Just like Lyle. Okay, we could go back to the Beast of Boggy Creek, right? So it's like Lyle getting a call or a report from someone who, I don't know, maybe they had a fabulous night out smoking meth, right? And they go, I just got attacked by a fucking Bigfoot.
Right?
And that doesn't sound unrealistic to me.
Right.
Like, I could probably tell you some calls that were on that level.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
But you got to listen to all of them,
You do, and not become, I think, biased or jaded.
Yeah.
That would be the hard thing for me.
Sure.
I mean, I would be like, and that's probably like the hard thing for Lyle too, right? You get so many of these non-credulous calls and reports, and you're like, oh Jesus Christ, how do I?
Yeah.
And at what point do you not, if there's, for example, a disparity in the number of calls that you get that are just like, wow, this is not urgent. It's potentially not at a 911 level.
Right.
It still needs to be managed, but what compartment do I put that in?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that can go on for a while. There's no bellwether that says,
especially since the pandemic, when people are so alone.
Oh yeah.
I mean, people have been, people just wanting to talk to people. They just want to talk to people.
Yeah. It's gotten worse for sure with that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you fall back on your education and your knowledge and your experience, I'm sure. But that's a lot, Matt. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how he does what he does. I mean,
sometimes you get real with him too, and it's really, you have to pick your moments.
Yeah.
On how and when to get real with someone, but somebody that just keeps calling me back, and gets really, really rude, and just thinks that you should be there for them for everything, right, and you're not signing. I guarantee you're not writing checks to me, right? You're not doing, and basically you have to say, you know what? I appreciate that you're having a hard time, but I am not the person to help you for this right now.
Yeah, I can't help you through that level of halo that you're trying to beat. That's making you sad.
You know what? I'm a person too. Right now, I've literally told someone, right now, I've had to pee for 15 minutes.
Right.
I've had to get that real with some of them sometimes holy shit, this is a real person I'm talking to.
It's like human.
If you're not going to do that, who is? If you're not going to be the person who says that to them, who else is going to say it?
Right. Yeah.
They obviously don't have other people in their lives to say it, or everyone in their life is saying it.
Right.
And you're just another person to push it forward.
Yeah.
Right. But then there are times you can't say it too.
Yeah.
I know there are people who, and I'm not a professional. I can't diagnose and I can't analyze, or, I can only armchair my way through this, but I've met people in my life who have been so unhappy. I mean, very unhappy all their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean, my thought is that doesn't that kind of negative energy build a toxin that will eventually destroy you physically, and that they should die early, right? But they don't. Some of the people I know who have that, they live until they're 99 or 105. and they're just they become more and more toxic.
Right. Yeah. It kind of flies in the face of everybody saying, stress is a killer. It's like, really?
Exactly. It's exactly. How have you been evil all of your life and you live to be 105?
Yeah, this isn't checking out with the old stress is a killer thing.
Yeah. People are inclined, I think, in some way they have presets that they get. And there's like even research that like if you've got a depressed mom, like while the child is in the womb, that becomes like it gets into like the kid's nervous system is like that's the standard. That's where you're
that's the baseline.
Chemically, that's where you're supposed to be.
Well, I understand that through just some of the light research that I've done in terms of genetic memory, which fucking amazes me. I mean, so beyond our lifetimes, the whole psychoanalytical diagnoses of phobias, that's going to be a fiction, after our lifetimes, because phobias, right now are defined as irrational fears. Well, all of the science is pointing to the fact that they're not irrational, that they're stemming from traumatic experiences that happened before people were born, but while they were after conception. And they're, that DNA is being passed down to children. So, for example, fear of spiders. Someone freaking got poisoned by a spider when they were pregnant, or in terms of men, maybe they got poisoned by a spider and then they decided to fuck somebody. And then they died. Let's just hope they had a good sexual experience.
That checks out.
Then they died.
Some men deal with things.
That becomes then a trauma that is built into DNA, right? So there's like this genetic transference of memory, of traumatic memory. And the more science that's coming out about it, it's like, that's why we're afraid of shit we don't even know why we're afraid of. It's because our great-great-great-grandmother had some kind of fucking wacko incident with a fucking bee or something, or a snake. Yeah.
I don't know. I have a phobia that I didn't used to have, and I just kind of picked up on it recently, like how bad it actually was. Like when I was a kid, I was not like claustrophobic. I would crawl like, the tunnels that would go under the highway that were maybe like 2 feet tall. I'd crawl through those things. No problem. Didn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
No, here, a couple of months ago, just they wanted to do an MRI on me for some minor bullshit. And I was like, okay. They started to slide me into that machine, and like literally 2 seconds, I was like, nope, fuck this, I'm out.
Interesting.
It like freaked me out.
And this was your first MRI?
Yeah.
Well, but that still, I mean, you've had experiences that are way more confining than that in your life.
I don't know. Well, I don't know. It felt like I was in a closet, or I was in like a casket almost. Like there's no space between my face, maybe 2 inches.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, and I'm not claustrophobic. I wouldn't say I am. I don't like being in confined spaces.
Right.
But I'm not afraid of them. I don't freak out or have anxiety attacks or anything if and I've had MRIs and I'm not, that doesn't bother me. But I will tell you what does freak me out is the prospect of being buried alive.
Yeah.
And that comes from reading Edgar fucking Allan Poe when I was fucking 12.
That sounds like an awful way to go.
The Cask of Amontillado. I mean, reading that kind of shit when I was like 12, and I was like, it also gave me a phobia of brick walls.
Oh, from the Cask of Amontillado?
Yeah. It's not like, it's a fear of like, I can live in a brick house. right? I'm not afraid of a brick wall. I love exposed brick. I think stylistically it's fabulous. I love restaurants with exposed brick. But when I see a bricklayer, like doing the mortar and the bricks and stacking the bricks, I have a little bit of an anxiety attack.
Like, stay away from that guy.
Right?
Well, yeah, because there's the possibility he could seal me into something and I'll never get out.
Yeah. Yeah, the Cask of Amontillado did that to me after I read it.
That's what it was. That's the story. That's the story that did it. Yeah.
And the bells jingling, from wearing the carnival hat.
Oh, my God. Stop. Let's switch. Change the subject. Right. Change it. Can we talk about Bigfoot, for God's sake? Let's
get back to Bigfoot.
I do have a funny side story. My last house, they had to do some repair in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. They put a hole in the wall. My cat crawled in there, then they sealed it back up. There's video of it. I've got video of it.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, I had to knock in the drywall and calm. We were all like, "Where's the cat?" And you could hear him. He was like, "I'm here."
Oh, Jesus! That's
poor little bastard.
Okay, guys, I really mean it. Change the fucking subject.
Wide open spaces. I'm actually agoraphobic of that, of wide open spaces. Like driving through the Kansas prairie or whatever and seeing just nothing forever. It doesn't bother me when I look out over the ocean. I find that soothing. But just seeing prairie that just goes on forever.
I developed a little bit of agoraphobia when I was in high school, but it had, I think, almost exclusively to do with the Cold War and the threat of nuclear attack, because I associated the prospect of nuclear bomb or apocalypse by nuclear bomb with some kind of vast open space. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think it probably had to do with, do you remember there was a made-for-TV movie? What was with Red Scare or Red, I can't remember what it was called.
Was it one that was set in the KC area?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And they've got all those silos.
I think I remember that.
Yeah.
And the girl running outside with the fallout.
Jason Robards was it.
Right.
Yeah. I can't. It was horrifying. Mm-hmm. And I think it was because they used the vast Kansas wheat fields as part of the cinematographic landscape, right? So it was the whole composition was about these vast open places. Because honestly, if you're going to film a nuclear blast
when nobody's around,
effectively, right? You're going to want a wide open space to show the whole mushroom cloud and the whole thing, right? So I think that's where I got it from.
The Day After. That's what
the Day After. Thank you. That's exactly the movie. Yeah. That was terrifying.
Yeah.
I think that movie freaked a lot of people out.
Yeah. I remember the girl running out into the fallout. And it's it's snowing. No, it's not.
Wasn't that the one that there was controversy because people thought it was actually real? It was actually happening?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Kind of like
the War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
I think there was something. I think there was some kind of controversy. If it wasn't about that one, it was about something else. But I think it may have been about that. And there was, because it was done in the style of news reports. So they would have newscasts that came on, and people thought it was really happening. And it freaked them out. I think I could be conflating that with something else.
Yeah. There was another one, made for TV-esque type film talking about media and instilling phobias that made me just scared to death of disease when I was a kid. And it was called the Cassandra Crossing.
I don't know that one.
I've heard the name, but I don't.
Yeah, it was about a virus that escapes on a train. And, this train's barreling across the country or whatever. And this virus escapes from vials. I don't remember how to, but, I was old enough to realize, kind of how viruses and sickness worked.
Oh.
And, it's like they can't stop the train anywhere or else it'll, spread throughout that community or whatever. So they had to keep the train barreling on. I don't remember exactly what the plot was, but I remember the name.
That wasn't based on a Michael Crichton book or something, was it?
Might have been. I don't know.
It sounds very similar. The Stand. You can look at the Stephen King book, The Stand. I mean, that was the quintessential book for me.
Right.
That was Armageddon, virus, contagion.
Mm-hmm. I think the most relieving thing about The Stand was the end and the fact that you find out, it's the devil,
right?
And it's this apocalyptic thing, and it's like, at least it's fantasy.
At least people aren't pulling the strings here, right?
Right. It's like, thank God the devil's at fault again.
I needed that. Yeah.
Thank you, devil. Thank you for the devil.
Thank you, Satan.
Thank you, Satan. Oh, praise Satan. Thank you.
Right.
Wow. On that note, I've got to prepare for church tomorrow morning.
I do send my best regards to all of them. And you have fun in church tomorrow.
I will. I love the church where I'm working. I'm artist in residence at a wonderful church, 50 years strong. We are the largest church servicing the LGBTQ plus community in the world.
Wow.
And so we have television broadcasts every week with reruns on Tuesday and Thursday.
Right on.
And so I sing 2 services every Sunday, the early morning service and then the televised service at 10:30. But I love that. Being a gay man, it also is very, I feel like I'm making such a difference in music ministry within my community. And, I go out after church and, I've got my little, a wonderful little cabaret that we go to there in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale. And I meet up with a lot of the congregation and, it's kind of an extended community extension is what it is from church. I've really enjoyed being a part of making a difference in the spiritual community of Fort Lauderdale. It's been really, really nice.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good fit.
Yeah.
And that said, if you ever want to tap into the Sunshine Community initiatives, you can always sign up to petition to sign a wonderful postcard that says gay, 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 that we're going to send to fucking DeSantis. I'll
sign that.
You do that.
Because, the buffoons running our state government right now. And they have no idea.
Yeah, that does give me a warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, well, you can also, you're not that far from Mar-a-Lago, are you?
We're south, so we're probably about an hour and a half south.
Yeah, that's not far. That's worth the postage. It's worth the postage for the postcard. I'll send you all the money for the stamp.
I'm in the Boca Raton, Deerfield Beach, so we're about 15 minutes north of Fort Lauderdale and about 40 minutes north of Miami. So we're more south, but we're Broward County.
Okay.
And then I think it switches to West Palm Beach. I think that's its own county, but that's probably, I think I haven't been up there. There's a great symphony up there. And a lot of my colleagues are performing for that symphony, and I haven't made my way up there just because it's like a drive. It's a little bit of a haul.
Yeah.
I've been to Orlando for foot volley tournaments, and that's like a 2.5 hour drive, 3 hour drive.
Places like that are always closer than you think, It's like, I think about getting into Kansas City and, it's only 2 hours from here. And every time I go, it's like, that's really not that far. I really need to get here more often,
Say, yeah.
Yeah. So where are you? Columbia?
Yeah, I'm Columbia. Yeah.
Yeah, so, Columbia. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank Aaron Ball for coming on the show, Undetermined the podcast. And please check out Lyle Blackburn's new book.
Yeah. And the audio.
Brand new.
The audiobook, especially if you want some more of Aaron's silky, sexy voice telling you this amazing story.
I don't know about silky sex, but I can read a person to sleep at night. So that's that's a good thing to think about.
Mesmer. Yeah.
We'll give you
so please check out that audiobook. It's amazing.
Please. We are also on WhisperSync. You can switch between.
Thank you for listening to Undetermined the podcast. Special guest, Aaron Ball.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great week, everybody. You're welcome. Thank you.
That's creepy AF, dude. Creepy AF.